Hello, superheroes of the project management world. Welcome to Project Insight's professional development series. Today, we're here to help you unlock the superpowers of your team using personality tools. Personality tools can be your secret weapon in understanding the unique heroes on your team and the extraordinary powers they bring to the table. We're here to help you harness those abilities so that way you can get the most out of your team and unite to be an unstoppable project success. First, we've got a few housekeeping items. Everybody will be on mute. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. In fact, feel free to use that now. If you have used any personality tools, please share which one. This is valid for one PDU. You must attend to the end. You must stay until the end of the session in order to qualify, where you will get your QR code. This link will be accessible later to access this video. Let me introduce you to our experts. First up, we've got Steve West. Steve has helped thousands of businesses make their work easier as the founder of Project Insight. Project Insight is an award-winning online project management tool. Our mission is to automate your work, unify your data, and make your life easier. Reach out if you're not currently using our tool. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Alongside Steve, we have Diane Buckley-Alwies. Diane is a seasoned PMP, an author, and directs core performance concepts. She really lives and breathes project management as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if you eat food, Diane, but I think that is it on that register.
Yeah.
So how are you both doing today?
Doing great, Matt.
Wonderful. You guys ready to get in and talk personality types?
Yes, we are. Diane, you're muted.
All right, There I am. All right, so we were talking about those strange personality types, right? None of us.
Well, I'm one of those. So there you go.
No, this is a really fun topic.
Yeah.
And what I find, over the years is any of these tools that we're going to talk about, or any of these concepts we're going to talk about, really help you understand your team, understand your clients, understand anybody you're working with, and can certainly give you some strength and some confidence in dealing with different people. So we're going to talk a lot about that. We can't go too deep in a 50-minute session, but hopefully this session really kind of piques your interest and you want to delve more. So what we're going to talk about today is what are personalities. And why are they important to us, especially as we are in the project management realm. We're going to talk about whether or not you can change those personalities, and then go through a few tools, a few of the common tools, maybe one that you haven't heard. And we're very interested in hearing if people on the call here have used other unique tools that they thought valuable. Mm-hmm. So let's get to it. All right. So what are personalities? And really, it's the way you perceive facts. And many of us, can probably, we think that we should all be aligned in the way that we think about things. But the reality is that we all perceive the world in a different way. And that's what personality is. I mean, it's something that you perceive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I perceive it the same way that Steve or the same way that Matt does. And that's why we have differences. That's why we have differences of opinions. That's why we have different values. So these personalities have actually evolved based on, life's problems. If you think about different value structures in, like, say, the Middle East or North America or in Australia, everybody's where their heritage has a lot to do with the personality you have. And it's interesting to understand how that personality shows up in the workplace when you're trying to work together. And I think one of the things that we'll learn in this session here is you have to acknowledge and understand people's personalities, not necessarily try to change it, but understand it, so that you can work better together. We won't see things the same way, and we won't even see all the facts. I was just talking about there is a video out there. If you want to put this down and look at it later, it's called The Invisible Gorilla. And if you use that as a test with your teams, it's something where you tell the people watching it to watch a particular thing, and then they miss half the facts in that video, and it's really insightful to say that you get so focused on what you're doing that you don't see all the facts. So have you ever heard of like two heads are better than one, right?
Mhm.
So that's exactly what we're talking about. You're going to have your unique personalities. Everybody's going to have their unique personalities, but how do we get together on those to be the most efficient in what we do?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned that people's backgrounds, different personalities based on where you live, and now many of us are, your customers are all over the world, and your workers are over the world, or even just doing remote work now. You're going to be most likely working with people all over the world.
Right,
So
right. And
it's you take it to a next level even.
right, exactly. And it does have a lot to do with your DNA. And we're going to go through that. And the other concept here to think about what a personality is your brain. It's impossible to pay attention to all the objective facts, right? So you think you do, but you might not. Now how many times like you kind of little zone out, and then you miss some of the conversation? Well, um, your personality won't be, or you physically won't pick up on all the facts. So
Mhm.
what happens then is your personality relies on that DNA to kind of perceive things or have feelings and stuff like that based on a situation. So even though you might all see the same facts, same set of facts, it's going to be perceived differently.
Our backgrounds will influence the way that we fill those gaps, right? And all three of
Absolutely.
us can watch the same thing, but fill in those little pieces a little bit differently and have a completely different, idea of what just happened based on that. Yeah.
Yep. And that P word of politics, you see that all over the
Oh
place.
yeah.
You see
Ooh,
that all over the place. But that gives me empathy. That's one of those things that this kind of concept gives me empathy and understanding to all walks of life and all perceptions. That's why you can never really get upset with people
Yeah.
for their
Well,
opinions.
and I think when, if you're managing a lot of projects and you got a lot of pressure on you, this extra thing can help you, but also can hurt you if you're just so,
Not paying
as a
attention.
project manager, it's so easy to get focused on, hey, let's
Right.
just get the job done and bulldoze around everybody. I mean, I know I'm capable of that, just because I'm so goal driven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're probably the same type,
Yeah.
right, Steve? And we're
Hey, that's why we can be on the same team. Real easy.
That's right. But two heads are usually better than one.
Yeah.
And if people have examples and stuff, where you experienced a better result than what you would have done yourself because you involved other people.
Mhm.
That's what we're talking about, is like looking at the world differently and appreciating everybody's different way that they look at the world and coming up with even better approaches to a problem or a solution that you're trying to um, um, attain.
Right.
And um, and those solutions do get better. So, I know that I've had situations where I'm I'll be my direct self, and I'll walk into a meeting and I will say, okay, well, here's how I think it's going to go. All right. This is the plan that I've put together. Now you start getting different input from everybody, and they're saying, well, when I did something like this, we had this situation happen or that situation happen. And you're like, oh, well, I've never experienced that before. Maybe we should address that. So I'm going to put a plan together based on my experiences, but having those other individuals in the group are going to we're going to help build a plan based on more than just my experiences.
Mhm.
And sometimes we get stuck with our own experiences, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So the whole goal of understanding these personalities is to leverage them in the best way possible.
That's the key, right? You can't know to make something better unless you identify that everybody's a little bit different and we have to flow with everybody's
Or
individuals.
acknowledge that maybe I don't know everything, right?
Well, yeah,
Right,
sure.
right. And so when you do have these differences of opinions, there's lots of things we can benefit from. We can have different communication styles. There might be some people like myself or Steve that are a bit more direct, and maybe Matt, you're a little bit more softer in your approach. Maybe there's people that you can communicate better with than I can communicate, and understanding that that we might have different communication skills and how best to leverage them in my project, or even work preferences, like how people, what's their, are they kind of like a morning kind of work person
Right.
or an evening kind of work person? What makes them happy? We've all, well, especially in the technology world, what's the tendency for when people prefer to work for those engineers, Steve?
Probably nighttime, you know, later in the day.
Not the
Yeah,
mornings.
not the mornings. They're probably,
Depends.
yeah, but that's kind of a tendency, isn't it? If you talk about that
Well,
programmer type.
well, we have some that get up early here, and some that are. We have actually, I would say that our team has people that are morning, and we have some that are night. You
Oh,
know,
do you allow them to work in their preferred
we
timeline?
well we well we have because we have some resources overseas. Obviously, most of us work normal. We have a range, but the thing about the dev is they end up working more hours than that work day generally. I
Hmm.
would say, but we try to work as a team together at the same time, and it's
Overlap as
mostly on
much as you
Pacific
can.
time. Yeah, and so obviously, if you're the engineers overseas have the most flexibility, except for they have to work some of their day on our time,
Hmm.
and then um, I think for any engineer, if you're in the middle of something hard and uh, as long as it's getting done, we don't really need to care when the timing is. But then if you're in support, let's say, or you're with what Matt's sales, all the sales team, they need to be available when the customers are available. So
Right. So
software business is just a different animal than I think a lot of other kinds of companies. But
Well,
we work when the clients work, and that unfortunately for us that's 24/7 365, right?
but I think
So
what you're saying, though, Matt, Steve, is
yeah.
that there's certain roles that require your best self at a
Yes.
certain time, right? And so understanding those types of personalities and tendencies helps people find the right job, right? I mean, if you're not a morning person and you're having to get up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock every morning, you're just not going to be your best self. So maybe the role that you have should be something that starts at 11 or 12, whatever. Those overseas people that
Yeah.
can work most of the evening. So again, it's taking the time to learn about these personalities and their tendencies and their preferences will make you a better project manager.
Right. Well, and
One of the ones.
the other question though, with the work is that you need to be aware of whether you can or can't go down that path based on the project you're doing.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just can't have a lot of flexibility, and sometimes you can.
Right.
So,
Well, and this is, if you look at these 10 items here, none of this is, in the PMBOK per se on
mhm,
the tactical stuff a project manager needs to do. But these are things that we need to think about when we're talking about our teams. The one I want to kind of talk a little bit more about is the stress responses. That's you're going to have people that deal really well in a stressful situation. You're going to have people that don't. So if you have a highly stressful situation, let's say a crisis happened, like all the servers went down, overnight, and it's impacting every single one of your clients. You don't want your infrastructure team to be the ones that are like just totally stressed out, can't function. They have to be good under pressure because there's a timeline. You've got, SLAs that you've got to get those servers back up and running, and they need to want to do those kinds of roles if they're going to be in that kind of role, right? But
definitely.
and if you have somebody that is just really calm demeanor, they might be good in working with a stressful client,
Yeah.
versus having two people that have, high stress, anxiety kind of things. It just may not work that well. I've had situations where I've put certain personalities for a training class in a certain industry because of their personality,
hmm
and not put people in those industries to do a training class because of their personality.
Right.
You want to find that right mix.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think, when you go back to the stressful situation, let's say there's some problem with servers, but having the even keeled people solving that problem is better than the people that are more emotionally charged, because they'll be able to think more logically, strategically, all of those kinds of things.
And even somebody, there's certain situations that, like, maybe it's I'm comfortable with. I'll use a personal example. I'm comfortable with a stressful situation as it relates to an implementation project. I can keep a level head. I can think through, all the situations. I can get the right resources. I can keep the client happy and calm with regard to what's going on there. Be patient with the people that are fixing the problem. I can deal with that. My husband's a merchant marine. I go on a boat, I'm like stressed out. If something goes wrong, I'm stressed out. But he's like, Mr. Even Keel. Oh, it's probably this or it's probably that. Give me a bottle of water. I'll be MacGyver and I'll fix it and, move on. So there's even situations where one person might be,
Yeah.
good in a work situation, but not in a personal situation. I'm not the person that's going to be all, calm if the boat's taken on water. He will.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we skipped over motivational triggers. I think that's a real good one
Yeah, go
to
for it.
talk through because, when it comes to, let's just say, I'll keep going down the software route. Um, Sometimes, if you're looking at your backlog and you're looking at what to do, it's good to give somebody something that they are into.
Mm-hmm.
And that probably can apply to any kind of project. So when you're looking at your work and your work breakdown structure, and this kind of task I know would be great for this person because they're really into that. And I think people probably just do that naturally, but it might make sense to stop and to really think that through sometimes even more than what you would normally do when you're trying to figure out who's going to do what on this project, giving the job to the person who's wants to do that. And then the other thing is obviously trying to figure out when someone isn't motivated, how do you motivate them to do a better job? That's
Well,
a little harder.
there was a whole time when it was like, you know, to stretch yourself, you should try to do the skills that you're not good at and improve those skills. Then there is a whole science of, you know what? Why don't you just focus on the things you're really good at and excel at that? And then you kind of adapt a little bit to get to the things that you're not good at. But why are you trying to change yourself so much? And that's the point to your point, Steve, is if you can have the resources that and have the people assigned to those tasks that want to do that work, you're going to have a much better result than as if you put people on things that they don't like to do.
Yeah.
And then if you can recognize when you have some items that nobody wants to do, then it's a matter of, okay, well, nobody wants to do it. I need somebody to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And accept and help them through that, recognizing that that's not something that somebody prefers to do. It's just going to be a little bit harder for them. And you're going to have to plan for that and do your risk management on that as well.
Yeah. I mean, maybe add more time to those kinds of
Mhm.
tasks, but also I think getting back to what I was saying before, you could also involve your team in the decision-making process of who's going to do what.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even let them pick what they want to work on.
right.
Well, how do you what a better way to get that ownership, right, of your team than this is my task that I took on. And then I think also to your point, Diane, where divvying up those less than desirables, right, at least in that way you're candid about it and you can say, look, we don't want to do this, unfortunately we all have to do this. Get that peanut butter and let everybody have that little impact and then move on, right?
Right.
So you
And
can your bucks.
one of I'll keep going on that because we're going to talk more. The other one that I like is number 7, which is the leadership potential. As a project manager, you want to see people have growth and not so much changing what you're doing because of their leadership skills, but helping people develop their leadership. You might see where somebody has some good potential, and you might want to continue to nurture that, give them a little bit more a responsibility. You're going to have people that want to just do their job, and not want the leadership, responsibility. But you're also going to identify those that may want to stretch themselves, may want to do more, and if you treat everybody the same, then you're going to probably stress out the people that want to just stay in their job, and you're going to get the people that want to have the growth get bored. I've seen a lot of people leave companies because nobody gave them a chance to excel. And this is where, even succession plannings, and, I've done it before in my past, is like I've stepped aside from my role because it was relatively stagnant going on in the company. I stepped aside to do something unique for myself, but that gave other people an opportunity to grow in that organization. And so you really should be thinking about that. It's your own leadership skills that you should be thinking as the leadership skills of the team that you're working with.
Definitely. And I think,
We are going to go ahead.
Well, like you mentioned, stepping aside and letting other people take charge. Sometimes a project manager maybe doesn't have a lot of say in that if you're matrixed, right? Because it's more if your resources don't report to you per se, you might have to go advocate to their
Absolutely.
bosses or whatever to help get that done. And that can,
Absolutely.
and then I think a lot of times the perception in a company is that the people will see you doing that, and it can really benefit you individually.
Mhm.
So
We should all be trying to support each other, and
yeah,
I
well,
think,
it doesn't always happen, unfortunately.
well, and that's kind of goes the whole team dynamics. I mean,
Yeah,
if we're taking the time to learn about people within our organization that we're working with, it does snowball. There is a positive thing to it. Like the team dynamics, it's, we're all from different backgrounds. Every single project you work on, the number one thing that's going to be different is the team. And you've got to, and each project is going to have a different kind of um, um, environment, aura, or whatever you want to call it, but because of the differences of the team. And so really understanding that is important, as well as the learning styles. I know that I'm what they call a kinesthetic learner, where I have to do, not read, not
yeah,
write. It's like I have to do. But there's people that can read and they learn really well that way, and they have people that just have to write all their notes down all the time, and they learn that way. And we can't treat everybody the same.
right.
So it's lots and lots of stuff to learn. So it's like, okay, now our heads are exploding, right? Because I got to do
Yeah.
my project management job as well. And not all the tools are the same. So we're going to go over a couple different tools here, and they have different purposes for you. And just to kind of remind you of what we said earlier, your personality is kind of set, like when you're at like
Oh
2 or
no.
3. Yeah, sorry. I can evolve it a bit. It's not, your personality is not affected by culture. Your personality is more affected by your values and how you grew up and where your heritage came from. Like for example, if you had to learn how, I don't know, let's say, um, your heritage was having to grow up in a really hot climate, so you might be very well suited to, oh, I've lost my train of thought here, but you may be well suited
Well,
to, go ahead.
I think you're talking nature versus
Yeah.
nurture.
Yeah. And that's different than culture. It's
Yeah.
different than culture, so
Because
and hope,
culture can be expanded on, right? But those pieces
Well, I
of
mean,
who you, yeah, is that
yeah,
the idea? Yeah.
culture is more along the nurture line, and nature is the DNA line, basically.
Yeah.
correct. And like these bullets say, it's like you can't really change your basic temperament, but as you mature, you can expand it a little bit, and that's what they're calling as wisdom. So wisdom's like broadening that personality. The personality is your base. Oops, my head just disappeared. Oops, go backwards. um Wisdom is broadening that personality and
Yeah.
broadening that base, but you're never going to go from one extreme to the other. You just can't. And when you recognize what that personality is, you can find your best self. And so you can find what you're best suited for. So has anybody on the call here ever like met somebody and talked to them and all of a sudden said, you know what, you would be perfect for this job?
Of course.
Right. And that's what you're talking about. There's a natural component to that personality that makes them suited. Like somebody that is not an extrovert, should they be the person that's at the front counter of a very busy coffee shop?
Probably not.
Right. If you want somebody that's bubbly and outgoing and can interact with the customers, and not somebody that wants to sit behind a screen and just be the register, not a little coffee shop, right? Especially if it's busy. So we have to think about that. So again, we can't really change our personality. And what's really interesting is these 3 different ones that we're going to go through today: the Myers-Briggs, the DISC, and the Big 5. And then if anybody has any other ones they'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. But all 3 of them, they have different purposes. I've done them several times, and they always seem to come out the same, right?
Meaning for yourself.
For myself, right? No matter how many times I've taken them, they come out the same. And it's like, well, I guess it's true. And maybe a little bit of a change from the time I was in my 20s to the time I am now, but it's pretty much, gives you the same answer. So let's.
Now, have you done this with your team? Have you said, hey, we're going to do this? And
I have done them with teams before, primarily the DISC. I've used that one because that's a really fast one.
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs did years ago, many times. I think that's still popular out there. You see a lot of it happening in HR groups now, because people are taking these tests like just to see how they're going to mesh with the company and where they're best suited for. So I think there's huge value in using these tools. And if you use them as it relates to your project, you can kind of jumpstart that team development and really kind of work through that. And that's actually our next webinar, talking about building your team. So this is a good precursor to that. But yes, using these tools and being able to understand the people on your team is huge.
And I think just doing them for, sorry, Matt, doing them for yourself, it helps you at least, maybe you can't get your team to take it. Cause I'm wondering too, like, there might be some limitations on this kind of thing that you can do within your own company with privacy these days, but at least taking it for yourself can help you have better understanding of other people.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's any privacy, but I'm sure there's some firms that have that, because a lot of this stuff is all free on the internet, and you can share and
I'm sure you could ask your team, do you guys want to do this? And
yeah, to a certain extent, it's a team building activity. You can use it as.
That's what I was going to say. It's a great catalyst to activity, right? Like you were saying, Diane, where I've done that at several times, where everybody does Myers-Briggs specifically, and then everybody gets those light bulbs and those aha moments if they haven't done it before, and then it is a great way to mesh into working together on a project.
So I'd be curious to see from an audience how many people have done either the Myers-Briggs, the DISC, or the Big 5. So let's talk about Myers-Briggs. As I said, I've done it at least 10 times.
Yeah, I've definitely done this one.
I am an ENTJ, period. Always will be, am today, will be tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I'm the person that's, I like working with people. So I'm an extrovert, from that perspective. I don't get my energy from doing things, by myself. There are times when I do, but I get more energy by being with people. And I've even found, over the last 4 or 5 years with everybody working more remotely, I am desiring to get back out and meet people face to face. So I'm actually doing a little bit more networking here locally, because it's like everything I do is online. And I'm like, it's great to talk to you guys on Zoom, but sometimes you want to have a cup of coffee and actually meet somebody face to face. We got an E and an FJ. Awesome. I think group.
That's what I am too, actually.
And
I'm not 100% sure. I can't remember. I'm getting old.
Well, you have to take your test later.
I know, right?
But the sensors and so there's the 4 different quadrants. So there's the E or the I. There's the S and the I. S, well, they call the intuitives, they use an N because there's 2 I's. You can't have 2 of the same letter. So you have the sensor, the intuitives. The sensors are the really fact-based detail that's probably more your engineers than they are the people that are more broad skill set. So the intuitives really prefer to have a variety of tasks, not have to do the same thing. So your sensors are the ones that really want to delve deep and be highly, what I call highly adapted. And the intuitives are the ones that are highly adaptable, or they're much more broad in their desire to work on things. The thinkers and the feelers. The thinkers are more logical in their decision-making process, and the feelers have that more empathy. I always tease some friends of mine because, and myself, says I'm not the feeler, which at times works really well, but at times works not so well. And I have to be very conscious of that because I don't have that empathetic bone in my body. I'm more that I'm not, I just don't. I care about you both. I care about you both, but I'm not going to feel every little pain that you're having in your life. Right.
No, I mean,
That's
and I
the
don't
other
think
extreme.
feeler necessarily means that, because
But it's the extreme.
I
Yeah.
believe I think I'm an ENFP actually, but I'd have to take it
Feelers.
again. But the feel can also be like not that you're irrational or anything like that, but that you use that sensory, that
Mhm.
feeling to make your decision making
Well,
process.
in this, it
More of an
talks about more of that
emotional.
cooperation, right? So I'm
Well, it
using
can
an
go both
extreme.
ways. You can be a feeler and
Mhm.
it can be a positive that you're empathizing with people, but or you can
Oh, absolutely.
feeling motivation to accomplish and not using the logicalness of
I
I want to,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, again, I'm going on the
yeah,
extremes of just the things,
right,
thinkers versus feelers. But yeah, but the feelers, to your point, they want to kind of get everybody's, that consensus, that cooperation. They want to,
yeah,
they want to pull everybody together, where the thinkers might be, well, A plus B plus C equals D,
yeah,
right? And it's much more logical. So
right,
and it's not, none of this is a positive or a negative. It's just
yeah. No, I know
identifying.
it, and it's funny because this just reminded me, and I'm gonna take this conversation just a little outside of
Go
work for
for
a
it.
minute because I'm an athlete, and I'm a swimmer, right? And swimming is a very like technical sport. There are people that are very thinking about how am I going to swim and da 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 da, and then there's people that are swimming like on emotion. They're like get up there and they emotionally react, and those are like the feelers would be swimming emotionally would maybe not think so much. They're just go do it, and then the thinkers are the ones like, oh, my hands got to be just like that and like that. So
Could be
these things,
counterproductive.
it can work both ways. I've seen it
Yeah.
where it blows someone up because if they're performing and it doesn't go exactly the way they thought it would, then it's too late. And then sometimes the feelers maybe go out, take a race out too hard, and then they fade at the bottom, at the end. Too so, but in work, I think it's the same kind of things that sometimes a thinker might get stuck analysis paralysis, or a thinker might be the right person for something because they're not going to be like you don't want the feeler dealing with the down server. The
Correct.
thinker really
Or
should be
potentially, right? It just, again,
possibly.
it's a whole combination you have to
Yeah.
take into consideration. So it's not the singular letter. It's like the ENTJ, the ENTJ, which I am, historically are like the project managers.
Mhm.
That's historically, but that's not all,
Of course not. Yeah.
right?
Well, these are all rules of thumbs,
Yeah, absolutely.
guidelines.
Yep.
Can't
And there's different ranges within each of the letters.
Yeah, and
And
anybody can be any of these letters at any point in
mhm.
time. You're not always, it's just tendencies, right?
Well, except for,
Mm.
our personality kind of puts us
Your
in,
default.
yeah, puts us in something there. The judgers and the perceivers is pretty, relatively straightforward, other than I'm not crazy about the terms that they use, which,
I know.
but judgers are more the organized, the rule followers, right?
Mm,
Versus the more spontaneous. So that's the difference between the judgers and the perceivers. So then you can then explain Diane. She likes to talk to people. She likes to have a lot of tasks. She wants to be logical, and she's going to follow the rules. So that's kind of me,
Yeah.
kind of me. And that is what it is. And I fit well in certain situations and maybe not in others.
Right.
But when it seems to work pretty well when I'm working on projects, because it's needed to be that organized person, and I have to open myself up to more, and that's on me. I have to open myself up to more, and I have to bring in people that complement me to really make
Well,
it.
what happens if you can't bring in people? You're just, here you go,
You still have to recognize that as a project manager, right? What are my gaps? And to a good example that I've used many times and I've experienced is the client also has a personality.
Right.
And many times you got to make sure that project manager that's working with that client mesh together. And I've seen it where
critical.
it's failed miserably. And I've had to change out project managers because I had one project manager. She was definitely a feeler, and she was definitely a perceiver. And she was working with a large client that was like heavy thinker, heavy judger, and they were just doing this.
Yeah.
So we had to switch things out. But
well, yeah, I mean, you definitely need to make sure you're handling your client. That's like number one.
Yeah. And in general, this particular one, the Myers-Briggs, is more about how people deal with their environment, how they process information, how they make decisions. The next one we're going to do is talk through the DISC profile. And yes, there's a little I there, but that's how it came. We were there's a little I.
See, there you are judging.
I. Okay. We caught that the other day.
It's been fact checked.
That's a lot of thinking and judging right there.
Process.
No, it's been fact. We got a bunch of project managers on here, so we're gonna guess that we're gonna get.
Didn't we conclude that so that you didn't think it was an L? That's what we
I think that's what we decided. That's exactly it, right? So
So the DISC personality test really talks more about communication and interpersonal relationships. And I'll start this one with a story that happened many years ago. Is I was hiring a project manager to work on a bunch of our smaller projects. We had a lot of large projects and we had a bunch of small projects. And what was happening is the small projects weren't getting the attention because we didn't have somebody dedicated to that. They were just kind of floundering amongst the large projects. And we said, okay, let's get a project manager just to work on the small projects. And this one lady came to us, and she was awesome. And she came to us with her DISC profile. And I'm a DI, high D, high I, if you can guess by the last conversation. She was a high C and high S. And the C's and S are more of that systematic, even tempered, like I need a checklist. And so I'm explaining to her like the things she's going to have to do, and I'm talking her through it, et cetera. I might have given her some documentation, but nothing formal or anything else. I'm talking, and she basically would not do a project unless I wrote it down. But once I wrote it down for her, and she followed that checklist, especially for these small ones, because you don't want to do a lot of thinking on them. You want to turn them over pretty quickly. They are pretty routine. And she totally excelled at delivering on those small projects because we spent the time and we put together her detailed checklist as to what she needed to do, what she needed to say, who she needed to talk to, how long stuff should take, what kinds of things that she should be looking at when the output comes out. So that really highlighted to me how understanding how people work together and communicate was very important. The high D, high I is like, I can work with a whiteboard. I'll start with a whiteboard. Doesn't matter. We'll build something from there. In her case, she needed very specific instructions and then was able to excel. So it really, really highlighted to me the importance of knowing where people are coming. Because I would have been, if I didn't know that, I would have been very frustrated with her and bringing her on as a new hire. I might have fired her because I didn't understand where she was coming from.
Yeah.
That's the superpower, though, of understanding that personality type, right, Diane? Is that you knew exactly how you two could coordinate and work together, and you got it solved because of of that
Well,
fact. So
I came to her. I literally accepted the fact that her personality was this. And I said, okay, what does she need to be successful? And she told me. And then we ended up having a very successful relationship, at work. If she didn't come with that, knowledge, or didn't give me that knowledge, I could totally see where I would have been very frustrated. And like I said, I probably could have fired her because she wouldn't do anything until it was documented.
Oh my goodness. See, I probably wouldn't have done what you did.
But we started that was the trick. She came with her disc profile.
Yeah,
She
yeah.
said, "This is me."
Well, maybe
And I'm
she
like,
was the one that actually recognized, hey, I don't know, Diane's just a bulldozer, and I need to,
no, she was new. She had just done it. She had just done that disc profile and brought it with her in part of our, I don't know if when it was before we hired her or after we hired her. Can't remember exactly, and I had done a disc. I had known that I was a DI, and I'm like, all right, well, as the leader here, I'm going to come to her. I'm going to adapt and and help her become successful. And it worked really well.
But yeah, and why wouldn't, having two DIs working together might not be good if you're both wanting to push the same, maybe having people that complement you can work better, more often than that.
Yeah. I mean, if I had somebody that came that was a DI, probably I wouldn't have had to do so much to prep for.
Right.
But I think the point more is that she was able to be very successful, even not being the same profile as I am.
Right.
She just needed certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. I couldn't do what she did because it was very routine.
Yeah.
And that's not me. Right. So I needed somebody that was more routine, that wanted to follow a script, that wanted to do things very routinely. And her value, or the success that she had, she was very proud of the fact that she was able to do these projects within that timeline, under budget. The clients were happy, and she was able to pound through 10 of them a month, kind of thing. And that was, she was ecstatic with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an example of divide and conquer, meaning that you delegated the things that you really weren't going to want to handle yourself anyway, and that was what she really wanted.
Right.
But and if your team is like, if I had here in our company, if everyone was like me, we wouldn't be. I don't want that.
You don't want all Steves.
No, well, that'd be terrible. But you need to have people that can do the things that you don't do well.
Right. Right. It's like having Matt on this team here, because he'll listen to us, and then he says something really profound, and it's like, absolutely.
Well, that made me think of that old Apple commercial where everybody's the same and marching, right?
Oh, right.
And that's the idea of, like, it really is, that's what it is. And it's a uniform kind of what it is if everybody's the same. So being able to identify where the strengths are, having that leadership ability that project managers need to have successful outcomes anyway, and say, I need you on these pieces, I need you on these, because this is how we can do it. And you're a checklist person, so here you go. Here's your checklist to get it done.
Right. Absolutely. So again, these things come with great benefit, and if you just take a time to kind of look at them and understand how it can help you, and I think it's really important to identify the gaps, where your team might be missing some resources. So the third one that we're going to go over, which probably isn't one that most people have been through. I kind of learned about this one over the last couple of years. And it's been around for a while, but it hasn't been out in the mainstream per se. But supposedly the results are even more reliable. And this one's more really truly about personality, where the Myers-Briggs was more about decision-making. The DISC is more about communication. This one is more about, like, personality. When you're born, where do you fall? Right. And there's really 5 big categories, and each one of them breaks down into 2 subcategories. We're not going to go through that. We don't have the time to, but if you're looking at these 5, you got the neuroticism, and again, words are always some kind of interesting, so don't take it personally. Extroversion, openness, agreeableness, and conscientiousness. Now, even on the disc one, there was a conscientiousness, but it means something different here. So really understand where you're coming from. The neuroticism is kind of a tendency towards more emotional stability, more anxiety. Again, this is out of the womb kind of thing. Where do you tend to be? Extroversion is where that energy or that social ability, similar to the extroversion that we saw on the Myers-Briggs. Openness is creativity, intelligence, intelligent curiosity, like having a curiosity to try new things. Agreeableness is not that you're agreeable or disagreeable per se, but are you more cooperative or you're more competitive? And then the conscientiousness is about more reliability and organization. So as I've been sharing for this whole session, I'll share what mine came out to be. My neuroticism was really low because I don't have any kind of, I don't have a problem with dealing with a conflict. I might be stressed out once in a while, but it takes a lot to stress me out. So it's really low. My extroversion, high, that's kind of expected. The one I was a little upset with, though, is my openness was kind of medium to low. And I'm like, once I learned about that, I was like, well, I think I'm creative, but maybe not as creative as Beethoven. Or, when you're really high in openness, that's where you really excel in that creativity. People that have done the 10,000, 20,000 hours worth of work, and, they're just really think things differently. And that's where that openness comes up. They really want to have that curiosity. So I was a little disappointed that mine was a little lower, but it is what it is, right? Agreeableness, mine was on the low end, meaning I don't have a problem disagreeing.
They chose some bad words down there.
I know. So yeah, don't take any of this personally. I pulled this off as like, there's all these spectrums and there's all these subsets that it is a really interesting one, because the part that I thought was really cool about this is that it's your behavior patterns. That was the word I was looking for before. It's your behaviors, and your behaviors come from your DNA. And that's where I said it was kind of really interesting to kind of, spend some time on this one. And then the conscientiousness is I was high, organized, reliable, that kind of thing. So these are, it's you take them in pieces and you take them all together. And this is the one where they really explained and they really talked about how you can't change your personality. If the big 5 one is truly personality and your behaviors, your innate behaviors, you really can't change it, but you can evolve it. You can adapt it. Like if somebody, let's just use the example of neuroticism. If somebody truly has a lot of anxiety, you're never going to get them to where they have no anxiety, right? If you have somebody that is absolutely always disagreeing, you're never going to get them to always agree. So they can adapt a little bit, but they're not going to change, grossly. And it is going to be something that's comes up and shows up when you're 2, and it doesn't really change that much. So I thought that was really interesting. I haven't had a chance to use this one in work at this point in time, but I thought it was interesting enough to bring to the table here today.
Well, it seems like if you really wanted to get, here we go. I'll let you take the slide.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I don't know that there's any one. Your best bet is to just try all of them.
Yeah. Or let's say you're having a challenge with communication. You're like, people just are not communicating well. You know what? let's all sit down and take the DISC profile. We'll do team building.
Yep.
Session. Who's the D's? Who's the I's? Who's the C's? Who's the S's? And what does that mean? That's a real easy one to. It's like a 2-page questionnaire. It's really is not a big one. That's a good one to start with if you've never done them. And then the Myers-Briggs one is more about how people make decisions. So let's say you have a larger project and you want to understand how to best allocate resources. That might be a good way to leverage, that tool on really helping identify who's going to be working on what and where they best fit in your project. The Big Five one, I think, is beyond that. If you really want to do some deep dives into, people's personalities and understand more and really what makes people tick. And I think that would be like a third level. But if I had to do it in order, I'd do probably the DISC, then Myers-Briggs, then the Big Five.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That way you get, results right away that you can work with.
And a lot of times, everybody on this call, communication is the number one challenge we have, I think, in projects. People don't communicate well enough to each other, probably because they're not communicating in a way that helps the person they're communicating with. I always say, like, let's say I'm a business analyst and I'm creating a requirements document. Should I be creating that requirements document for my benefit? No, I need to create it for the benefit of the person that's going to read it.
Right.
So it's kind of the same thing is our communication fails when we don't communicate in the way that the receiver needs the information. So if I had to choose one, I'd start with DISC and really kind of help your communication skills in your group.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, identify where your problems are and where you think you might benefit from it and give them a try. We have the links in here on the webinar.
Yep.
They give us, most of them are all free. There are paid versions, but I think they all have a free version that you can, give it a try with.
Test the waters.
Let us know if any of our customers happen to be out there. Let us know if you've done this or what you've done. Send it on in. We'll be curious to hear what other people are doing.
Yeah, and if anybody's, identified anything, Matt, on the call on any other tools, I'm curious to know if there's anybody else that has used other ones out there.
I know that my wife has used something called the Enneagram. At her work, they use that, which is a personality kind of right in line with what we're saying. It's just another tool set. So
how do you spell that?
It's ENNEAGRAM. She also can get, the language that's on some of those scales can also be kind of offensive, right? Kind of to Steve's point earlier. So I think that's one of the things to always take into consideration when you are looking at these is that it's to be more self-aware so that you can, get there. It's not to put you in a box of like, you are this and that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm not going to call somebody, you're neurotic.
Exactly. Like, I didn't
that's why the Big Five,
but
the words on there were pretty bad on some.
You might want to hang out with Woody Allen.
You're not conscientious, well right?
Yeah,
you're not conscientious.
Exactly. Yeah. Just to call that out, right? As you are exploring, use it in your teams, know the audience and, have that.
Yeah. Again, you want to have a well-developed team dynamics already to really go down into that Big Five conversation. That's why I said the DISC probably is the first one, Myers-Briggs second, and Big Five.
He's in.
Yeah, why don't we show the PDU out there for those of
Gotcha.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for attending.
Yep. Grab your phone, get your scan. You will receive this before the end of the week. That's when we send those out. This video will be here to use on the link at any point. So really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Diane. Good job.
Yeah, definitely a different one. So, and
yeah,
next month we're getting most out of your team. So we're going to kind of continue this conversation with regard to the various roles within a project team.
Which is exciting, right? Piggyback off of what we just learned and how do we now understand where this is you and this is you and how can we get what we want. From there, we'll go into portfolio management in November, and then we'll finish the year out with some change management concepts. So it'll be wonderful.
Yeah. And I think we are good to go.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.